Hello everybody, my name is Starrapter and welcome to the channel. This is my spoiler-free review for Marvel's The Eternals, directed by Chloe Zou. So, The Eternals are, as explained in the movie, these demigods created by this thing called the Celestial, which is pretty much a god, and they are over there on Earth watching for these things and guarding against these things called Deviants, which just tear apart the human population viciously. So, the last 500 years, they haven't had any deviants, but they are just living among the humans, right? They've all separated since throughout the different areas on planet Earth. And then what happens is when Thanos, blipped everybody and then everybody came back and created this huge power surge, and now these deviants are all of a sudden appearing again. So it's up to all these Eternals to kind of come back together as sort of a family to fight these things off. So my positives are: the cinematography is great. This is directed by Chloe Zou. There's a lot of interpersonal communications, a lot of just great landscaping shots like that. So great job to the cinematographer. And we also have a decent amount of solid work by the actors here in this movie. And that's where my good is going to end, because honestly, guys, I did not enjoy this movie. This, to me, felt like a complete dud for a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. And I will say, starting off with the vibe, right? This didn't really hit me like a normal Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. There's a lot of expected tones and different kind of things you would expect from a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. It just didn't feel like that. The tone was very dour. There's lots of very slow scenes. I mean, there was not a whole lot of action in this movie, to be honest with you, compared to its 2.5 hour runtime. So there's lots of just scenes that just the pacing just felt off to me. This movie jumps around a heck of a lot. So it does go in the past and then it goes back to present day, but it goes to it must be almost 10 different locations. It goes from place to place to place, and it just takes a while for this movie to get going, even though it's just the editing is crazy with this movie. I will say there's a lot of CGI, almost too much CGI. They're fighting these things called the Deviants, which take different shapes of, flying creatures or, four-legged beasts and wolves and stuff like that. But there's not really any stakes to this. There's not really any reason for us to be afraid of these creatures, because we don't really see the effect that they'll have on the Earth. They're not really proving to be a big evil villain that has a master plan. No, these are just creatures that the Eternals are just fighting. And I feel like the Eternals themselves are just kind of boring. I just didn't really care about these characters, to be honest with you. I didn't latch onto them. And it's not because, they didn't have these things built up in movies. Yeah, that would have helped. But I mean, we get origin stories. Like, characters have to start off somewhere. I think there's just too many characters. Plus, I just couldn't get emotionally attached to characters when characters died. I just didn't feel anything. I was just sitting there through the movie like, okay, cool. I feel like this movie was too inside baseball. So from the beginning, I knew this movie was in trouble because they have an opening crawl, kind of like Star Wars. And Marvel movies have never needed an opening crawl. So that was a red flag to me. It's like, okay, I'm reading this opening crawl, thinking in my head, wow, I don't know if the mainstream audience is really going to latch on to what they're explaining in these 3 or 4 paragraphs here. So that was already like, okay, that's crazy. And as this movie kept going on and on, they kept going way over my head, even with some of these concepts, some of this exposition. It just was like, okay, what's going on here? This feels like it was a direct comic book adaptation from like the 1960s or whatever. These characters were created by Jack Kirby. It was just like, okay, they did not even try to hide the fact that they are trying to go for the hardcore comic audience. And that's not usually what Marvel Cinematic Universe is. They're usually more opening to the mainstream, but I feel like the mainstream is going to get a little bit lost with this, especially towards that latter half of the movie. There's explanation that I missed or I didn't get clearly enough because I just was lost with the last part of the movie. Like, what was going on? What was the point of this action? To me, it just felt like action for the heck of it. Certain characters' fates, the way they go out is just very questionable. I don't know. This movie just, I can go on and on, but it just didn't resonate with me. I mean, we even have, this is a nitpicky thing, but I thought it was interesting. You have a character named Cersei, but then you have a character that is played by Richard Madden, sorry, the guy that played Robert Stark. So it's like you have this Game of Thrones actor acting with a character named Cersei, who was a character in Game of Thrones. It was just like too meta for me. So every time I seen those on screen, I was like, okay, somebody could have changed the name or something, because Game of Thrones is just way too much of a popular thing for people to just glance over. So that was something nitpicky but I just wanted to point that out. I mean, it was just very blah. This movie, the end credit scenes were even, I couldn't even get behind the first one. The second one was pretty cool. maybe it's worth waiting for, but not to the extent where people are going crazy over the internet about it, in my opinion. But that is basically my review of the Eternals. If you could tell, man, this is probably the lowest, maybe one of the lowest scores movies I've ever seen, not even just with Marvel. I got to give this one a 4 out of 10. This one I would not recommend to go see. I mean, if you're a hardcore comic book fan that likes the Eternals, yeah, you'd probably get a lot out of this. But for the mainstream audience, I don't know how these guys are going to factor in, because I just can't recommend watching this thing. It's just not that enjoyable compared to the other experiences I've had earlier in the year, such as with Shang-Chi, right? That was an excellent movie that built up an original character, but then we have these original characters, and it just doesn't hit, really. It's a shame. I wanted to really like this movie, obviously, but maybe on the second viewing I'll like it better. But my initial impressions, my first review here is just, look, I can't really, recommend, for instance, my mother or somebody to see this movie, because they are going to be confused as all heck. So that's going to do it for my review of Marvel's The Eternals. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comment section down below. For more on movie reviews, you can check out my other content, such as my review for Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Let me know in the comment section below what you think. So that is going to do it for me. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and do hit that like button to make sure that you let me know if you like this or not. That's going to do it for me, Starrapter. Thank you so much for watching, and bye-bye. Thanks for checking out the video. Please hit that thumbs up symbol. It helps me know that I'm making content that you guys enjoy. And if you enjoyed this video, I also include 2 videos down below you guys should check out. And please consider subscribing to this channel. It helps support me, and it notifies you guys of when I get new videos up on the channel. You can also contact me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Starrapter.